commandments of Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai. Okay? It says, and they entered into Euphrates by the narrow passages of the river. Now, if you look at the land of Assyria, a map of the land of Assyria, you'll see where they entered into the Euphrates River, into the narrow passages of the river, and then they started coming down because they came down towards where you have the so-called Persian Gulf, which empties out into the Indian Ocean, which goes around the Horn of Africa, and that was the way they took, because there's certain currents in the waters that'll guide you if you just follow them, you know. And the Canaanites, they were experts of the sea, you know. They were expert shipmen, you know. They knew the currents, they knew how to work the currents, you know. So basically, they knew it, you know, and all those navigators that came afterwards that learned the art of cartography, the art of going into the sea by way of ships. They all knew about those currents. You know, Prince Henry the Navigator, he was one of those top navigators, you know, which Christopher Columbus learned from. So they had all those records, all those documents. All right. It says, they entered into the Euphrates by the narrow passages of the river, for the Most High then showed signs for them and held still the flood till they were passed over. Why? Because when you're at sea, you know, there's hurricanes, there's storms, there's different cyclones, you know, whirlpools, you know, all different type of stuff that can take you out. But the Lord held back that flood so that they can make it over to the side of the world. You know, as to where when you watch the movie The Bounty, the main character, I forget his name, Captain Bligh, he wanted to go through the Horn of Africa, you know, through one of the major places where the water was violent, it was turbulent, you know, and the men didn't want to go through there. But what happened was the Lord held back those storms and stuff so that Israel could make it over to the side of the world to fulfill prophecy. It says, for through that country there was a great way to go, namely of 1.5 years. So in other words, in order to get to that country, the path to that country was 1.5 years. It doesn't take no 1.5 years to go from Assyria to Africa, or from Assyria to Georgia, Russia, or to Turkey, or any of those lands around it. It doesn't take that long to get there by way of ship.
I got some to back up what you're saying, going back to the scriptures. All right, proving that the Apocrypha is part of the scriptures. It says 1 Kings 9:25. It said, and 3 times in a year did Solomon offer burnt offerings and peace offerings upon the altar which he built unto the Lord. And he burnt incense upon the altar that was before the Lord. So he finished the house. All right, it says, and King Solomon made a navy of ships and Easy Gabar, which is beside Elath, on the shore of the Red Sea, in the land of Edom. And Hiram, by the way, Hiram and Gabar, look up the word Hiram. Hiram is a key name among the Masons. He was a Canaanite, a Phoenician, so you understand. And Hiram sent in the navy his servants, shipmen that had knowledge of the sea, what you just said, with the servants of Solomon. And they came to Ophir and fetched from thence gold 420 talents and brought it to King Solomon, because King Solomon was the king. He's a major king back then. You see? Now I'm going to move on to the next chapter, because I got it written down here. Okay. Bear with me for a minute. Okay, it says here, it goes on to say in 1 Corinthians 10:11, and the navy also of Hiram that brought gold in Ophir from Ophir, brought in from Ophir great plenty of almond trees and precious stones. In other words, they had a circuit that they went back and forth to the Americas. Good. And the king made of the almond trees pillars for the house of the Lord and for the king's house, harps also, and psalteries, and for singers. There came no such almond trees, nor were seen unto this day. And King Solomon gave unto Queen Sheba all her desire. Never had sex though. He didn't give her of his seed whatsoever she asked, because there's a big bullshit among the Rastafarians about Melanek coming out of Sheba, because Solomon and Sheba had sex with each other. That's a fable, all right? Whatever she asked, besides that which Solomon gave her of his royal bounty, and that didn't include his rod. So she turned and went to her own country, she and her servants. Now, when King Solomon put the rod on a woman, that was it. So now, why would she go back to her country? That was bullshit, man. And she was in the different men. She was a queen that had like a monarch, a king, had many wives. She was a queen that had many husbands. Husbands. It was open. It wasn't no secret thing. When you go into the history, what was that called? Polyandry. Polyandry means many men. For lack of a better term, poly mean more than one, and andry meaning men. That's where you get the word Andrew, many men. Like among the man that has more than one woman, what do you call that? What's the term? Polygamy. All right. Well, women having more than one man is called polyandry, and that's what she was a part of. Okay, so she went back and got with them different men that played her husband. So she was out of order. All right? That's right. What we call a nasty hoe. It says, besides that, he had of the merchantmen and of the traffic. The word traffic does not mean cars. They didn't have cars back then. Traffic means business. Of the spice merchants, and of all the kings of Arabia, and of the governors of the country. And King Solomon made 200 targets of beaten gold, 1,600. Basically, they're telling you, when he built the house of the Lord for the Lord, and he built his house, most of those rare things that he got, woods and so forth, and gold, were from the Americas. And Israel knew about that. That's why you read what you read, and you're going to go back to that about Israel knowing to go to the Americas. And they said, when we come to the Americas, which it wasn't called the Americas, it was called the land of Canaan, because it was the Canaanites led by one man, Hiram, that went back and forth to America, and when they got all those spices and almond trees and gold and wood, they would bring it back to Solomon, because they were servants under Solomon. All right?
This is I just want to read this real quick before I read on. This is from, because remember we read that the Lord held still the floods, right? This is Wisdom of Solomon 14 and 3. It says, but thy providence, O Father, governeth it, for thou hast made a way in the sea, and a safe path in the waves, showing that thou canst save from all danger, because there's danger out there in the high seas. Yea, though a man went to sea without art, nevertheless thou wouldest not that the works of thy wisdom should be idle. And therefore do men commit their lives to a small piece of wood, and passing the rough sea in a weak vessel are saved. For in the old time also, when the proud giants perished, the hope of the world governed by thy hand escaped in a weak vessel, and left to all ages a seed of generations, which I was talking about Noah. All right, so going back to 2 Ezra 13 and 45, it says, for through that country there was a great way to go. In other words, to get to that country, namely of a year and a half, and the same region is called Arsareth.
Can I say something real quick? This is First Kings. I should have kept reading. It said 1 Kings 10:22. It says, For the king had at sea a navy of Tarshish with the navy of Hiram. Hiram had his own navy, and Hiram was he was a master